Good evening, everyday leaders. I am Melahni Ake, and I'm coming to you from the Everyday Leaders Studio here in Indianapolis. Today is a very special day. Today is my birthday, and I am celebrating heading into the fourth year for the Everyday Leaders platform. My heart is so full tonight. I am so excited. Those of you that have been on my journey have followed me through the John Maxwell training, through following Simon Sinek, and all of these amazing leaders that are doing incredible things to change their world. And so that's been my theme since our event last year in 2020 when we did the Everyday Leaders Leadership Summit, February the 29th. We came in the whole year saying we were going to change the world. And then the world changed on March 13th. Little did we know, right? So through COVID, I have been intentionally trying to add value to everything and everyone that is involved in my life, bringing amazing leaders to help us realize that sometimes it's right in front of us, and we just have to tune in and be aware of our gifts. So I found someone that I'm connected to now through the Why Institute. And Matthew Woodget, thank you so much. You are the CEO of Go Narrative, and thank you for coming on my birthday to help me celebrate. And I'm really looking forward to you sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, Melanie. Thank you. We're excited to be here. And thank you, everybody, for listening in.
Yes, this is going to be so. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. Yes, so I
And
want to
happy
tell.
birthday, of course.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I do want to tell everybody if you're starting to watch this, if you're going to watch this on the replay or you're joining us live here, I've got a little special gift that I love to give away for my birthday. So, since Matthew and I are both for the Y Institute, we've both been certified. I think it's really important that everyone finds their why, and we're going to talk a lot about that. So, if you're watching this live or on the replay, and you type in hashtag Y, WHY, or you go to everydayleaders.com and you can just send um, register for Everyday Leaders. And then in the information space to connect, just type in hashtag Y. So if you do that, either way, the website or here on the live streams, wherever you're watching this or replay, you will be entered in a drawing. And on Saturday, I'm going to have another live, and we will do a live drawing there for all the people that have hashtag Y on any platform. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give away a seat for the upcoming class and a Y assessment. And that'll take place on January the 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So it's a big deal. This is a $250 value. And we're going to talk about why that's so important and why we know that it will change your life. And that's what I've put on this advertisement for tonight. So awesome, Phyllis. I love it. Yeah. So type in hashtag Y. And if you are watching, you will be registered for the drawing. And we'll do that on Saturday on the live. So without further ado, Matthew, please tell us everything that's going on in your life. And our Y is challenge. Both of our Y is challenge. So that's what's fun. You're going to listen to our conversation and know why. So, all right, I'm going to shut up, Matthew. Thanks for joining tonight.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely. The great thing about why, and you and I were having a conversation a couple of days ago about this with another one of your friends, is it's not so much about the what you do in the world, right? Which we spend our whole lives working hard to build skill sets, whether that's deep or whether it's broad. It's really about what's that engine that's driving us. And when I discovered my why, it actually wasn't so much of a discovery, it was more of a realization and or a clarification because it made sense. And it's I've always challenged the status quo and it's got me in all sorts of trouble. I'm actually surprised that I lasted as long as I did in corporate America. I spent the best part of 20 years at Intel and at Microsoft. Started in IT at Intel and ended up, when I left Microsoft, I was chief storyteller for Microsoft Dynamics and I was running the Lotus F1 team global sponsorship. So quite a change within that. But I tell you what, I just couldn't, I couldn't help myself, right? I'd be sitting in a meeting and it'd be, Matthew, you know, the politically right thing to do for your career in this meeting is to just not say anything or to smile and nod. But, you know, the conversation would be going on and people would be talking about stuff. And I just couldn't help myself. I'd be like, so why is that? Or do we have to do it that way? And unfortunately, a lot of people took that personally, right? Because it was their baby, it was their program, it was their product, it was whatever it is, right? So having a wire challenge got me in a lot of trouble in corporate America. But it also, I think, you know, as a corporation or as any business, having people who have the why of challenge gives you the ability to look at things from different perspectives. And that's not the only important thing you need to do in business. You do need to have good processes. You do need to have mastery. You do need to build great products. You do need to think about the process of how you go to market. There's all sorts of things you have to worry about as a business. And if you don't look at problems from different angles, no matter what success you've got, there's only going to be a limited runway for that because the world changes, people change. And so if you're not prepared for that change and harnessing the ability to look at things from different angles, challenging the status quo, then you're going to be in a tricky spot. So it got me in a lot of trouble, but it's also something that, you know, is a huge value to any business.
Well, I love that because here I sit here and I say, I know exactly what you're talking about. When you're in corporate America, when you're a challenger, when you say you have the why of challenge and you don't realize it, you sometimes look up to people and you say, well, why don't you really understand where I'm coming from? And why can't you just get on board with my ideas? And why can't you listen to me? And why can't I be put in those positions where I can actually make something happen? Right. And then when you do, there are a lot of people that get jealous because it's a natural gift that you have. That challenge just comes to you naturally where you look at problems and say, well, if we did it this way or this way or this way. And so there are other personalities, right? For people that have taken the disc profile and the Enneagram and strength finders, all of those are behaviors. But your why is why you operate. It's why you show up into that room and it what drives every single decision that you make. And so that's what's so important. And I want to know from you, I would love to ask you this question. So here we go live. Uh, if you had to pick out your why before you took the assessment, what would you have thought your why was?
Challenge. Oddly enough,
Mhm.
in fact, it's been in my resume for over a decade. In fact, I remember when I left Intel, I was actually laid off. There was about 95 of us or so in the team, the channel marketing team, spread between Oregon and Folsom down in California. And there was a massive layoff at Intel, and I think 15 people were left from that team. I found out on my first day back in the office after our honeymoon, which was an interesting one. But in the mission to go and find a job, I had business cards printed. And one of the things on the business card was ideas through execution, but another one was challenging the status quo. And that eventually found its way into my resume. And so it was, like I said, it was like this validation of what I was. And it was nice to get that validation. To your point, I mean, and I felt this way. At Microsoft, I felt like I had a glass ceiling. And at the time, I wondered if that was my dyslexia or my ADHD. And you know, as a dyslexic and an ADHD person with ADHD, sometimes that kind of process and sequential things, you're not as strong at that. I'm not great. I need a better way and a right way to help move things forward. And luckily, I've got some of those people in my life. But I felt like I had this glass ceiling. And now when I look back on it, I realize it probably wasn't the dyslexia and the ADHD. It probably was just, it wasn't the right environment for me.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, really important because it's very easy to feel trapped, to feel alone, and to feel like something, to your point, that something's wrong. Whereas actually, it's just maybe you're not quite in the right space. Maybe a different type of job or a different type of company or a, you know, fill in the blank, right? Maybe a slight change or a slight tweak will help you actually, you know, be in a place where you can make the most of everything you're bringing to the table. To my point about better way, it's like huge amount of value there, and all the 9 whys, everybody brings something to the table. And so, but yeah, that glass ceiling, it was at that point I was like, you know what? And I went through a major life tragedy in 2015 that was really lit the blue touch paper for me to finally make that decision to leave corporate America. But yeah, so that was kind of a bit of my story anyway.
So tell us about 2015.
So July the 19th, 2015 was a very, very hot day in Seattle. And I got the phone call that nobody wants to get, but an expat in particular who is an 9 hour flight from family, eight time zones different, doesn't want to get. And my parents had been killed in a car crash. And so that for me, it was, and it took an enormous amount of time. It's something that's very much a part of who I am now. And I actually believe that I firmly believe that people should be more open with their grief, because in being open with your grief, you can find people that can be supportive and you can get that help. And so it's a part of me now. But for that first year, 2 years after that happened, it was hell on earth, really, for me and my sisters. And
But Matthew,
but it
I'm
also
so
really
sorry.
inspired me to make the most of life.
I'm so sorry. First of
Thank
all,
you.
I'm so sorry for that loss. This is a really important message for people that are going through loss right now through COVID, right? Because when you say you don't connect to, or you're not grieving properly, or trying to figure out what that personal loss is like for you, not being able to reach out and connect to someone that can understand, that is a huge lesson, right? No matter what why you have, everyone has grief. And so this is really, really important right now, because we're not through COVID. And so a lot of people are still experiencing or will experience great loss. So what a powerful message, right, to be able to kind of walk people through. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to really highlight that because it's affecting every single one of us every single day.
And in fact, I'd like to take this opportunity. I wasn't planning on saying this, but there's a third episode, if you will, of a panel that I participate on with the Virginia Mason Traumatic Grief Clinic. And I think it's either later this month or early next month. Long story short, if you email me, Matthew with two T's at gonarrative.com, if you are going through grief or you have a loved one who is, I can send you the details of that panel. We're doing a Zoom panel. And it's proved to be very, very helpful for a lot of people. And so if that can be a resource to anybody, I would love to help connect you with that. There's a group of us who've all been through traumatic grief that will be on that.
That is wonderful. Now might be a great time for me to share your website. So I'm going to take people right here. So this is so Matthew's website, Go Narrative. If you type in gonarrative.com, this is what you're going to find. And so if you need to connect to him, especially to find out about this panel, I think it would be really important, a great resource. And I'm so glad that you spoke up about this. You have got such experience, Matthew, with all these companies. You know, we look up here, these are all brands that we're familiar with, just like McDonald's, right? So Microsoft, SAP, Intel, FICO, Oracle. And when you talk about, you know, the F1 team, right, the Lotus F1 team, that's something that's near and dear to my heart here in Indianapolis, as we had that race here for a long time. uh, Here's the thing, right? As a leader, as someone that you're looked up to now for storytelling and helping people connect to their passion, that's why we're here today, really having you celebrate those things to be able to lead others, helping solve their problems. And so tell me about your business with Go Narrative, and so what you've done to help others with their stories.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really for where this all comes from is I had this realization. And in fact, my first job that explicitly used storytelling was offered to me as I was literally on my way out the door from Microsoft. I'd been there 5 years, having gone through the layoffs at Intel. I wanted to be CEO of Intel. Like I was so committed to the company. But after those layoffs, I was like, you know what? For better or worse, we are just a number when we're in a corporation. And I wanted to have more control over my destiny. So I set an objective of only being at Microsoft for 5 years and then moving on to the next challenge. And just as I was about to leave, Fred Studer, who was a GM that I'd had previously at Microsoft, who is now was at that time in the Dynamics team, reached out to me and said, Matthew, I'd like to have you come in and run the storytelling for Microsoft Dynamics. And also included the F1 responsibilities. Being a car guy, it was an offer I couldn't refuse, and Fred knew it. And so, as I sat down to start working on this job, I went out there and I had a look at for storytelling advice, and I found all the classics, right? The 7 types of story, the Pixar storytelling tips. I found great coaches out there, people like Bo Eason and Michael Margolis, and amongst others. And there was a lot of focus on the individual, and a lot of focus on TV, film, and that type of thing. But there wasn't a lot that really focused on the frameworks for business. So I ended up spending the next several years as an interpreter. On the one hand, I had storytelling. The other hand, I had the business, and I worked with the teams to do that. But it was a shock. It was, I thought it was going to be easy, and I couldn't have been more mistaken. But at that time, I realized, as I dug deeper and deeper and deeper into storytelling and the function and the brain science and the cultural aspects of it, I came to realize that this is very much a part of who we are, a very, very important part of who we are. It's how our brains effectively work. Is we call it storytelling, but really what it is, and Will Storr, who wrote this wonderful book called The Science of Storytelling, and I love it because it goes down to the basics. It goes down to the fundamentals. And in the book, he talks about how our brain is tuned to look for change. It's tuned to look for light and dark, loud and quiet, before and after. And journeys, right? Everything that we experience in life is ultimately about the journey that we're on. And so these things all connect together. And that's the brain science part. And then you immediately start to look at the social science part, how we communicate with others. And as Will Storr says, our mission in life is to get along and get ahead. And those things are in conflict sometimes, and having spent time in corporate America, I can report back from the front lines. That's very much the case in the politics of a big organization. But it's true. We want to get along with each other, and we also want to have success in our lives. And the deeper I looked at it, the more I realized everything that we know in our culture is storytelling. When a first responder talks somebody down off a ledge, when a child convinces their parent to buy them a toy, when a priest stands up in front of a congregation, this is all stories. It's all about before, it's all about after, and importantly, the details. A story is only a story if there's before and after, and other things like a person, a hero, right, that goes through the change. And people who work in business who are passionate about storytelling will often talk about that. The reverse is true. You can't have a great story without facts, without details, without specifics. Like, one of the reasons people will remember my story is the fact that I said, on the first day back after my honeymoon, I found out I've been laid off. That is a specific piece of data. And so we use stories to transmit this data. So here I was at Microsoft, chief storyteller for one of the business units. I was invited to participate in other teams, helping other teams out. Rumor has it, there's actually still at least one video being used in the marketing curriculum at Microsoft that has me in it. I don't know if it's actually true anymore, but until recently that was the case. And it was at that moment, it hit me. As much fun as I've had at Microsoft, I didn't want to be there forever. I wanted to keep diversity. I wanted to challenge my status quo all the time. And it was at that moment I had the epiphany. I want to go and do this for more people, for more companies. And so that was my inspiration. I spent a year at an agency helping a friend get an agency off the ground when I left Microsoft. And then 4 years ago, this month, I founded Go Narrative.
See, 4 years we're celebrating. I love this. This is all celebration today, right? It's so important. Storytelling, you think about that as coaches, as writers. If you want to write a book, you've got to be able to tell stories. So this is something, these are skills that you can use in anything you do in your life. And so if you can capture this, if you can be able to understand what your story is, your why, and then how that really can connect to communicating what you want to do with your life and your purpose, this is just wonderful. This is just wonderful. And it's easy, right? We fight it our whole lives and we say, why don't I fit in? Why is my idea not accepted? Why do I have to try so hard to try to get promoted into the right role? And I love what you said. Maybe it's the wrong environment. It's okay. Give yourself permission to try different things because first of all, we're going to tell you if you discover your why, what you do is going to have way more impact and you're going to be able to really transform your own life and hopefully change your world.
Exactly. And when I got connected into the Y Institute by a friend of mine, Bill Prater Jr., and he introduced me to Gary and Dan as well, obviously, it really struck me that we were doing this as a part of our strategic narrative process anyway.
Mhm.
We just weren't doing it as well. And so the Y Institute as the first step, especially when we work for and serve smaller businesses, medium-sized businesses. It's a little bit different in corporations in terms of the power of the why. If you're a senior product marketing leader and you're developing a strategic narrative, it's useful to know. It's incredibly powerful personally to know your why, and your team and your leadership team to know the why. Is that going to affect the all-up brand of your corporation? Not necessarily. But when we work with the smaller companies or the mid-sized companies, small for me sometimes is still jaded by the fact that I worked in these huge corporations and a lot of our clients have been these huge corporations. But ultimately, it's still the beginning. Understanding the why of what is being done is one of the first steps to be able to go on the road of developing a strategic narrative. And we've got a process and a framework that we go through to build out that strategic narrative. And I just fell in love with the Y Institute, and they're great people as well. But being able to have that at the beginning of our process. So we do that now. It's a part of our process when we start that workshopping and that aggregating and that absorbing of information from our clients early on. We also take them through the why so that they can truly understand and find that spark of passion and then connect that to their business. Because quite frankly, Melanie, at the end of the day, despite the technology and all the wires and and all the software and all the cloud services, business is about people. And knowing your why and knowing other people's whys, or even wondering what other people's whys are, can be very, very helpful in getting along and getting ahead.
Well, and I love this because I'm going to go back to the race car days, right? So if you're thinking about putting a race car team together, you've got to understand the fundamentals, like how the driver's thinking and how you're going to communicate and all the equipment that you need, right? And it's just like doing this. You have to go back to the very basics and understand why you're doing what you're doing so that you can put the right team together. And so if you think about small businesses, a lot of times we have all the time to work in the business, but not on the business. And so if you can start back from scratch and say, okay, so who the owner is, why did you start this business? What are you really passionate about? What's the real reason behind you doing what you're doing? And are you communicating that correctly? That's where we lose it. Most of the time, small businesses are struggling because they've got the order mixed up. And I love how Gary teaches this, and Simon even, right? When we talk about the why, how, and what, if we're showing up with the how and we think that's our why, it really confuses us, our messaging, our customers, our target, and how successful we can be in our life. And so, have you had an example of really kind of understanding or validating changing the order of those things and how much more impact that's had?
Well, uh, funnily enough, actually, one of the examples I have here, which illustrates it quite nicely, is but long before I did went through the why discovery, and it was actually when I was at Microsoft, and one of my responsibilities in the storytelling capacity was around the customer stories that we were telling, and thus the case studies.
Hmm.
And Microsoft, like any other corporate, from lower mid-size and up, right? Case studies are a big part of what you need to do to have the social proof to show potential customers that things are good, right? I mean, it's still relevant for even the smallest of companies, but the case study, the official kind of production of a case study.
Right.
And most companies adopt an approach which is called problem, solution, benefit, which in its essence isn't a bad thing, understanding what the problem was, right? Because people are dealing with that, trying to overcome it. What was the solution? Or how did they solve that problem? And what was the benefit they got from it? There's fundamentally nothing actually wrong with that until you try and apply it. And you talk about the problem very briefly in the context of the solution, because that's what you're trying to sell, rather than in the context of the person and the company that had the problem. And so one of the things that I did was I said, okay, let's approach case studies differently. Let's start with why. Like, why does this company exist? So as Microsoft, like we're talking to a company that's choosing to buy from Microsoft in that case, why is that company in business? Their mission in the world, their passion, how are they serving the planet? And let's start with that. And then let's look at the challenges that they're having and how they're going about trying to deal with that. And then what are they doing to actually solve it? And a part of that final what step is the software that you're selling, the cloud service you're selling, the widget, the lightsaber, whatever your magical secret sauce is a part of that. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Your company, your customer's solution includes much more. I mean, my grooming solution, I've been cutting my hair for almost a year now. It includes, right, I've got to deal with like shaving and trimming a beard and whatever. So if I buy a Dorco razor, then that's not my solution. That's only one part of it. And so starting with why in that case, really think about your customers and their why and how you help them achieve their why. And that then becomes very compelling. And then you can do the ingredients list on the packet of cereal at the end. And it just so happens that you're a part of that. But you've engaged, you've got their attention, you've been heard, and you've set yourself up to be able to sell more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know what I love about this is when you take us through an example like that and saying about your razor, every single person can apply this to your life. It's, we think small, medium-sized companies, large companies, leaders of companies that need to understand this. And you apply this to your life, and it can change everything that you see and your opportunities that are in front of you. And because you start to communicate differently. And so I know for me, right? So ours is both challenge. We're both the why of challenge. So we challenge the status quo. And then what is your how, Matthew?
So I challenge the status quo to find a better way to clarity.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
my how is better way, and my what is clarity.
I love that we have the same how, which is better ways. So we're always challenging each other and our communities that we serve to find better ways to do things. And my what is to contribute. So I'm figuring, I'm doing things, I'm showing up to be able to contribute in bigger ways. And so I love that, the clarity that you have behind that, because I think when we communicate it in the opposite order or the wrong order, or we think things are more like us, like I thought mine was maybe make sense, right? I like to put things in order and make sense. But that has nothing to do with how I'm showing up, right? And so taking some of these assessments and going through these courses really help you to identify, clarify, and be able to, like Gary says, right? Get clear, stand out, and play bigger in the world. And that's what you can do for yourself and for your organization.
And there's something inspiring as well about part of the process that the Y Institute does is it also shows you other people that you would recognize from popular culture that had the similar why. And just that act alone can be inspiring. I mean, so as a dyslexic, knowing that Albert Einstein's dyslexic, Oprah Winfrey's dyslexic, as a dyslexic child, growing up, knowing that there were people out there that I was somewhat like in some way, shape, or form, is inspirational. And it makes you feel less alone.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's only 9 whys, that there's every single person you meet. I had a conversation with a chap for the first time, brilliant conversation, a branding agency focused on graphics and design and logos, and we're looking at forming an alliance together because it'd be a great alliance. And I'm listening to it and I'm thinking about, and I don't know what his why is, but I'm wondering, is it maybe better way? Is it maybe it's clarify? So I'm also a better sensor.
Mhm.
when I know my why and I know the fact that there's just these other whys, because I'm not forcing or assuming that everybody's the same. I'm thinking, oh, well, why are they approaching it like that? Where's it coming from? And even if I don't know their why, and even if I never know their why, it's quite frankly, it's a gateway to empathy.
Mhm. Absolutely, I love that, a gateway to empathy. So I have to tell you a little secret. People that are in my inner circle know this. My husband's why, when he took this, is trust, right?
My wife's why is trust.
Oh my gosh. Isn't that crazy?
And I figured it out before. And then I had to take the test and it was
It's so
so.
crazy. And so for people that are watching this, there is a statistical algorithm that you take when you do this why assessment. And so it's about 5 or 10 minutes, and you just answer a few questions, and it leads you through a normal algorithm. And so this is very predictable, the way you answer these questions. And so it's like many other tests that you've taken, Myers Briggs or Strength Finders or any of those, but it really identifies the why you operate, your soul driven purpose. And so then when this workshop happens, and this is what I'm offering. So those of you that have just kind of joined or have joined midway, if you type in the chat here or go to my website, everydayleaders.com, hashtag why. So hashtag why, even on YouTube in the response, wherever, by Saturday, I'm going to have a drawing for a $250 value giveaway. You're going to get an assessment for your own why. Plus, you're going to be able to attend the class on January the 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern, a 2 hour class to go through building your how and your what statement. So, this is amazing. And Matthew and I are here just really having this great conversation about when we discovered our why and how we're using that to really contribute and be better citizens for the world, to use our gifts. And that's what it's all about, right?
It is, and it's funny because the when you look at the what, right, and your what is contribute and mine's clarity, and you look at what you do with everyday leaders in your business and how you're contributing and helping people be more successful, and then if you look at what Go Narrative's doing, we're helping companies clarify their message, clarify their narrative. And that's, we talk about getting attention, being heard, and selling more. It's like you're never going to get attention if you don't have a clear narrative, if you don't clearly understand who and what you stand for. In fact, there's quite a big sort of misunderstanding about narrative and storytelling, and that is that it's just about the telling,
Mm.
that it's just about, like, say, marketing, right? It's just about promotion. It's just about marketing communications. But here's the thing, when you actually figure out and clarify your narrative, it's a filter, not just for everything you say, it's a filter for everything you do. So if your engineering team, once you've got a strategic narrative and your company knows its why, if your engineering team says, hey, we were thinking about doing X, and then you as a CEO can go and go back to your narrative and just, say, how does this connect to that? Is this pass the sniff test? Is it pass the filter? Does it pass the litmus test? And if it doesn't, you shouldn't even be investing in that type of product and that type of technology. Anyway, I kind of went off piece there, but yeah, so it's
So great. It's so true, right? Because if you're working on a team right now and you're thinking, well, how would this affect my team? I have 4 or 5 people. It's COVID. I've got to put my team back together after when we get back together, and are in maybe cubicles, right? Or we're going into another organization. We've had to move, or we're doing everything online. How important is that to know why people are operating if they're at home, so that you can try to help encourage them, and so you can connect to them in a different way? Because this has been a real challenge for people through COVID, that have had to have home offices that have never experienced that before. And maybe, their why is, they need clarity, right? If you have people that are on your team that need clarity, and now you're at home, they're not feeling clear. They're not feeling connected. They're very confused. And so you've got to figure out a way to clarify everything, every meeting, every agenda, so that they still feel connected, because they can't just go to the next cubicle and say, hey, I forgot those notes, or I didn't get that quite clear. Can I ask you another question? It's not easy to do that now that we're in this Zoom environment. So, what would you recommend, Matthew, for people that have that why of clarity?
well, for the why of clarity is very much about, is it's not so much about um, making sense of things, right? Because there's a why of make sense, and there's a why of clarity. Making sense is really about the truly understanding. Clarity is about drawing out all of the information, like getting it all out into the sunlight.
Mhm.
And that in itself enables knowing that you've got somebody on your team who's got the why of clarity or clarify is they're going to need to understand all the bits and pieces. They're going to need to see it. They don't need to be an expert in everything, but they need to see the whole picture. Because if they don't have that whole picture, they're not going to be able to execute. Now, clarity when it's a what of the tail end of like mine, for example, it's a little
Right.
bit different. But when it's your why, that's very, very much what it's all about. And to your point about COVID and team building and so on, giving your team the why assessment, let alone taking them through the actual the personal WHY.os process, which you're going to be doing on later in January with some of your network and your customers, is that you're giving it's a gift. So that's part one of this is you're literally as a leader. I mean, I'm sure every manager and every leader who's listening to this has over the past 12 months had to think a little bit harder about how do I recognize, how do I say thank you? Is it thank you cards? Is it gifts? What did I do something for them for the holidays? So you're thinking about that type of thing as a great leader anyway. This is another quiver in your bow, and it's your opportunity to give your team something that they are going to appreciate just for themselves as a gift for themselves. But it's kind of like but wait, there's more, right? You're as a leader are going to understand them better. And when you go through the personal WHY.os with your whole team's going to understand each other better. And this was something, I've done DISC, I've done Myers-Briggs. I really enjoy those. Strength Finder was probably a personal favorite. And
Mhm.
I found them all I found them all fascinating. Uh, but there was something about the why that was a bit different. There was something that was about, I really felt, even though there's only 9 whys, I really felt like I had ownership of it. It really helped me kind of just rationalize and be a bit clearer, no pun intended, on where I was coming from. So as a leader, if you can give this to your team, it has got literally just a whole bunch of benefits. It's positive, it makes them feel good, it helps you work better together. And you know what? It's also, especially the whole COVID situation, by understanding your team that much better, it's going to help you all work together better because we're trying to, as a team, we're trying to get along and get ahead together.
Absolutely. There's so much benefit to it. I think, I've given this to all my clients that I was working with as I started to go through the process, and I saw that it just helped them clarify faster, right? So when you say, do you know what your clarifying statement is? Because that's your what. You want to help customers get to that point. If you do that on a personal level, you just start to operate differently. You get up with different reasons. You start to go grocery shopping differently. I mean, really, it does change everything that you do and why you do it, and who you're connecting to, who you give your time to, because you want that to fulfill you so that you can then fill other people up. So, if you're in a business, I really encourage you to a think about taking this assessment for yourself and for your team and giving this as gifts to other people for their birthdays, for their anniversaries. What a great program to say, hey, you've been married for so long now. Do you want to know why you've stayed together this long? Right. But I love this. And so I am just so honored that you came on and have been sharing so much information. You are such a storyteller, and to be able to connect people to what you're doing and why you're doing it and showing up in the world to really give back and help them. You have an amazing story, Matthew.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been a fantastic conversation, regardless. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Why and the Why Institute, and we both are. So hopefully we've shared that a little bit with the folks who are listening today as well.
Oh my gosh. So Matthew, I'm going to share your website again because I know we're having so much fun. But if people want to connect to you, if they want to really hire you to come in and help them tell their story with Go Narrative, how can we find you? What's the easiest way to reach out to you?
The easiest way is, and if you scroll up a little bit there, you can see there's both in the top right hand corner and also one of the tiles. Um, if you scroll the other way, if you
Oh, sorry.
yeah. So those tiles there, if you the complimentary consultation there, which is also available in the top right hand corner, you can find some time to connect, and we can talk. And if you can also there's a couple other options there, but there's the bot. If I happen to be online at the time the bots there, which looks a little bit like me,
Mhm.
then we could even chat real time. But if not, you can also sign up for our newsletter, send a message. And again, my email's matthew@gonarrative.com. And I'd love to hear from folks. Again, can connect folks with that grief resource, but also can help you understand, as a business leader who's looking to connect your product, your service to the market, and do that in a much more effective way so you can get attention, be heard, and sell more. We can obviously also help you with that, share with you what the process is, how we work with our clients, and all that good stuff as well. So, Melanie, thank you for the opportunity to make that connection with your listeners as well.
Oh, absolutely. And this will be so if you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching, remember type in #why, or you can go to everydayleaders.com and just connect to me through the contact, register at everydayleaders.com and let me know #why. You will be registered. I'm going to have a drawing on Saturday on our live with Tim Schur, and we're going to talk about his Legend Summit coming up. And we will have a drawing live for someone that will be given away this why assessment. Plus, you'll be joining the WHY.os Workshop on January the 24th. So, if you're watching this again, replay #why, and it's going to be really exciting. The journey is so much fun to help people and change their lives. And so, Matthew, thank you so much for being an everyday leader that is really changing the world. I so appreciate you, and it's been great to be connected to you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you for having me on, and thank you everybody for listening as well. It's been really great to be able to chat with you today.
Have a great 2021.
Wonderful 2021. Fingers
Yes.
crossed.
Come back soon, okay? Keep us informed of what's happening in your life.
Absolutely. We'll do.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, Matthew.
Bye bye.